Ever find yourself thinking back to those friends who are practically family? You know, the ones, years of inside jokes, those awkward phases we'd rather forget, maybe one too many late-night heart-to-hearts.
Oh, absolutely. Those friends become a part of who you are.
Exactly. And get ready to dive into Happy Place, a story all about those enduring bonds of friendship, that bittersweet magic of tradition, and those moments when, well, life throws you a curveball, as it tends to do.
And those curveballs. They usually involve a healthy dose of reality, make you see those nostalgic memories a little differently, don't you think? That's what I love about Happy Place, how it captures that push and pull, between clinging to shared history and navigating the, well, sometimes bumpy terrain of growing as a person. These characters, they're clinging to a shared history, yeah, but they're also on their own paths, changing as people, and that creates some really interesting conflict.
You're telling me?
Yeah.
We're introduced to Harriet, the protagonist, and let's just say she's carrying the weight of everyone's expectations. And then there's Sabrina. Sabrina takes organized to a whole new level. And I mean spreadsheets for vacation itineraries, people. Spreadsheets.
Emily Henry really nails that personality type, doesn't she? That friend, the one who's almost too put together, and you can't help but wonder what's going on beneath that meticulously crafted exterior.
Right. You got to love them for it, but it definitely makes you wonder how that dynamic plays out, especially in a friend group. And speaking of, we can't forget Cleo, the free spirit, the artist, and Parth, who could probably make a trip to the DMV feel like an adventure.
And as if this group wasn't enough, we throw in the significant others, Wynn, Harriet's on-again, off-again boyfriend, and Kimmy, Cleo's girlfriend. Talk of bringing your own baggage.
It's a recipe for relationship drama, served with a side of lobster rolls, am I right? Because, of course, this all goes down in a picture-perfect Maine cottage, a place filled with shared memories.
This is where Henry's writing really shines. This isn't just some random vacation home. She uses such vivid details. You can practically smell the salty air, feel those worn floorboards under your feet. The cottage, it's like a character in itself, embodying all those years they've spent together.
And like any good story, we soon find out this is not just a relaxing getaway. Why is this trip their last? What's lurking beneath the surface of everyone's carefully constructed summer facade? What does this place actually mean to each of them?
Those are the questions that really kept me hooked, but what I found particularly fascinating was how Henry delves into Harriet and Wynn's relationship. Talk about complicated. They're dealing with a breakup, years of unspoken feelings, and the pressure of pretending everything's fine in front of their friends.
Oh, to be a fly on the wall during those awkward, we're totally over each other, glances over breakfast, right? But it's not just Harriet and Wynn dealing with tension, Remember those growing pains friendships go through, especially as we get older and start questioning our paths, what's important to us. Yeah, this friend group, they're facing those head on.
And what's interesting is that the setting, this idyllic cottage that's supposed to evoke carefree nostalgia, actually amplifies those growing pains. It's like they're stuck in a time capsule that doesn't reflect who they are anymore, who they're becoming.
Which brings us to one of the most telling scenes in this first part, the infamous, meticulously planned, disastrous boat trip. Help me unpack this one, because on the surface it seems like, it's a vacation gone wrong, but I think there's more to it, don't you? What's really going on beneath Sabrina's need for a picture-perfect day on the water?
What I find so fascinating about this scene is that Henry uses something that seems lighthearted, this event, to reveal those little cracks in their friendship. Sabrina's meticulous planning, which is usually kind of endearing, becomes almost comical. It highlights her need for control, but if you look deeper, is she trying to recreate a happiness, from the past that just isn't attainable anymore?
That's a great point. It's like she's desperately clinging to those perfect childhood summers, but everyone else is on a different wavelength now, and it kind of explodes in her face. And Cleo, always the perceptive one, she calls Sabrina out for being controlling, for dismissing everyone else's needs.
And that confrontation on the boat, it becomes this pivotal moment in their friendship. Raw, honest, and it forces them to confront the fact that their comfortable, familiar dynamic, well, it might need a serious reality check.
That confrontation on the boat really sets the stage for the rest of the trip, doesn't it? Like the calm before the storm, and you know how things can get with a group of friends. A little bit of tension, maybe a few too many glasses of wine under the stars.
And let's not forget that underlying romantic tension, practically crackling in the air. Harriet and Wynn playing that dangerous we're just friends game, but that chemistry.
Undeniable, those stolen glances, lingering touches.
Mm.
You could cut the tension with a knife. Speaking of cutting tension, remember that poker game?
Oh, yeah.
Things escalate pretty quickly there.
That poker game, it's like a masterclass in passive aggression, those little barbs. It's almost painful to read, but also so relatable, right? We've all been there when everyone's pretending everything's fine, but underneath, that resentment's simmering.
And then, bam. The truth about Harriet and Wynn's breakup comes out, like someone threw a grenade into the room.
What's so interesting is how Henry uses this small thing, a card game, to blow up that fragile peace they've built. Suddenly, all those unspoken resentments, fears about their friendship, it all comes spilling out.
And Sabrina, bless her organized heart, she totally loses it. Unloads years of frustration on Cleo and Harriet, accusing them of taking her for granted, of not putting in the effort. It's brutal, but you also kind of want to high-five her for finally saying what everyone's thinking.
It's that classic case of the quiet one finally snapping. Makes you wonder if all that planning, those perfectly organized trips, were Sabrina's way of holding on to a past that's, well, gone.
And it's not just Sabrina feeling the weight of expectations. Cleo, she's always been the honest one, calls Sabrina out for being controlling, for using these trips as a way to control their lives. It's messy, it's painful, but it's also, really cathartic.
Exactly. It's in that moment of brutal honesty that they can finally acknowledge the elephant in the room, right? Their friendships are changing and they have to adapt if they want to survive.
And as if things couldn't get any messier, Sabrina drops a bombshell. She and Parth are getting married that weekend at the cottage. Talk about adding fuel to the fire.
Brilliant, isn't it? Just when you think they've hit peak drama, Henry throws in this wedding, and everyone seems thrilled on the surface, but you can feel this unease, this sense that this sudden wedding is forcing them to confront some hard truths.
It's like the wedding becomes the symbol of everything that's changing. They aren't those carefree college kids anymore, and the future, well, it's not as clear as it used to be.
And that's where those individual journeys really come to the forefront. Cleo, she's finding fulfillment in her urban farm, questioning that traditional artist's path. Sabrina's laser-focused on her career, and Harriet's drowning in her residency.
Like they're all standing at the edge of adulthood, realizing that their shared past might not be enough to hold them together anymore. And in the middle of all this external chaos, Harriet's also battling her own demons. She's so focused on living up to her family's expectations that she's lost sight of her own happiness.
And it's Wynn, of all people, who encourages her to be honest with herself, with her parents. Reminds her that she has the power to choose her own path, even if it means disappointing the people she loves.
Powerful message, right? That sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for others is to be true to who you are, even if it ruffles some feathers. Or, in this case, maybe capsizes the boat entirely.
Speaking of rocking the boat, remember that eventful Twister game? Emily Henry sure knows how to turn up the heat, both literally and figuratively.
Oh yeah, the wine cellar. Enough said. But beyond the obvious, I found myself wondering, what does this release of passion tell us about them? What are they really looking for in each other?
That's such a good question. Because on the surface, it seems like, lust, tequila. But if you dig a little deeper, you see this encounter is about so much more than just attraction.
Exactly. It's about comfort, familiarity, escaping from all that pressure in their lives.
It's like that wine cellar becomes this little world that represents their relationship, a place to shed their inhibitions, those carefully built facades, and just be themselves, messy and complicated with each other.
And what's interesting is that even after that encounter, after admitting their feelings, there's still this uncertainty, this sense of different paths. Wynn's built a life in Montana, and Harry is trying to figure out her own ambitions.
Exactly. It's not as easy as just admitting they're in love, is it? They're at a crossroads, and the stakes, well, they've never been higher.
And just when you think things can't get more complicated, Harriet's parents show up at the cottage, completely clueless that their daughter's perfect life is falling apart faster than,
Talk about awkward family reunions, right? But beyond that initial, oh no, my parents are here feeling, this visit forces Harriet to face the consequences of her choices. No more hiding from her parents' expectations.
It's the ultimate reality check. And it leads to these tough but important conversations about what really matters. What does success even mean? What does it mean to be happy? These are questions we all ask ourselves, right?
Absolutely. Henry tackles those big, messy questions head on. No easy answers.
And with all this emotional stuff going on, Harriet finds peace in this unexpected place, the pottery studio. It's more than just a hobby, isn't it?
Yeah, it becomes the symbol of her self-discovery, a way to work through those feelings that are hard to put into words. And what strikes me about this is how Henry uses creating something, as a metaphor for Harriet's own transformation. Taking this raw clay and shaping it into something beautiful, unique, it reminds us that we all have the power to shape our own lives, even when things get tough.
And sometimes those tough things involve saying goodbye. Because even though there's this connection with Wynne, this hope for a happy ending, Harriet decides to let him go.
Heartbreaking, but so empowering at the same time. She chooses herself, her happiness, her own journey, even if it means saying goodbye to the man she loves.
And that's where the power of place really comes in, don't you think? Because it's in that pottery studio, surrounded by her creations, that Harriet finds the strength to move forward. And she creates this vase, inspired by Wynne's father, Hank, like a symbol of their shared history, that bond that remains.
That vase, it shows us that sometimes the most meaningful connections go beyond physical distance, They become a part of who we are, our memories, shaping us.
And then, in this beautiful twist, Wynne decides to stay in Maine, to honor his father by helping his mother sell some of Hank's pottery. It's like life is giving them a second chance, but this time, they're both more self-aware, more mature.
They've let go of those old expectations that need to control everything, and they're embracing the unknown together.
And it's not just Harriet and Wynne finding some peace. Sabrina, after this tearful talk with Cleo, realizes her need to control things. It comes from a fear of losing her friends, of their history slipping away.
And realizing that allows her to let go a little, to accept that change is inevitable, and that sometimes the best friendships are the ones that allow for growth, even if it means stepping outside your comfort zone.
Exactly. And Cleo, she embraces the unconventional, finds joy in her urban farm, her art, that connection to nature.
She reminds us that sometimes a happy place isn't a physical place, but a feeling, a way of being that values authenticity, personal fulfillment.
So as we close the book on Happy Place, on this deep dive, I keep coming back to this. What are your happy places? Those people, places, passions that make you feel truly alive, understood? And how can you nurture those connections, even as life throws its curveballs?
It's a question worth asking ourselves, because in the end, it's those connections, those moments of joy and belonging that carry us through.
This has been another deep dive. We'll see you next time.